morning and welcome. Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason on this Wednesday. You know, I will say, I don't hate short weeks. I really don't. It's great. I mean, I've only been here twice. It should be Tuesday. No, it's already Wednesday. Hump Day is here. Debt ceiling, right? Will they pass it? Will they not? It looks close. It made it through committee, which was probably, I thought, a harder thing to do. We'll wait and see on that. But once again, the whole debt ceiling made for TV. I mean, essentially at the end, as it sits right now, they will cut no spending. None at all. I mean, they're going to say that they did, but the realities will be every single program, including the discretionary, will have spent more money in 2023 than 2022. Now, I don't know where all these guys went to school. I mean, I'm sure most of these guys are smarter than me. I'm sure of it. I'm sure they're really highly educated, smart people. But how does spending more equal a spending cut? I still haven't figured. I've tried really hard. I think it's all this new math. Now I understand, because I could never understand. Math is racist. And you know what? It's not about the right answer. Right? No, we don't care about the right answer. It's the process that you go through that's more important than the actual answer itself. No, it isn't. By the way, I don't want to get on an airplane. I don't want to go over a bridge. I would not want to be in any building where the people that built it were like, well, we may not have the right answer, but we went through the process really, really good. I mean, that's really what's happening today. But again, this is why gold is up. It was the easiest trade in the world. I mean, for the last 2.5 weeks, I've told you, do not let the debt ceiling go by without adding to your portfolio. 800-951-0592. That is our toll-free number. No, I know, we still don't have voicemail. Now, they're promising today. I don't know how hard. I did not know that this would be complicated. We have spent right now at least 12 hours of holding, at least, just for voicemail. I mean, come on, man. We got to be able to do better. AllAmericanGold.com is the website. But, Jason, yeah, you know what? Rand Paul did say today, hey, I don't know. I'm kind of with Double J on this. I don't understand how you're saying that we're cutting when we're actually spending more money. Jason, how does this work? I mean, this tells you, no wonder why inflation is so bad.
It's a new definition. They had the word transitory, right? And then that had to go away. And they had the recession. We had the recession in 2022 by definition, right? And they just changed that. So I think if I'm translating what they're saying, Joe, by not spending a whole lot more of an increase in spending, that's a spending cut. Is that what's happening? They're spending more, but it's a less of a more. So that's their spending cut. Is that essentially what they're saying? That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Hey, we initially said we are going to spend this much more. But now we're going to spend a little less than that much more. We're still going to spend more. We're just going to spend less of more.
That's so the new definition of spending cut. That's
a spending cut. There you have it, right? Yes.
I think that's it, Joe. I think that's it. It's all on how you look at it. It's all the perspective. Where do you see it? From what angle, I guess. And if you don't see it from our angle, right, we got to convince you to come over to our angle. You got to come over here and look at it. Don't look at it from over there.
And again, right. See, you're just looking at this all wrong, Double. Come on now. Let's look at it differently, right? 5 months ago, we said we were going to spend a lot more. Now we're just going to spend a little less than a lot more. The less is what makes it even worse, because the less now, they're talking now $50 billion less. That's it. That's all you could do. You couldn't find any more. How about like the IRS, right? The Republicans, this tells you how on board the Republicans were with the Democrats with the IRS. $1 billion. That was the big dramatic cut. A whole $1 billion. Well, I'm being unfair. because it's a 2-year deal. It's $1.4 billion. We gave them 80, right? That's it. 80 extra. I want to make that was an 80 extra, right? Now, 1.4 billion because the Republicans, they know, oh yeah, listen, right in time for digital currency, we're going to make sure everybody and all of their wealth that we could possibly get our hand on is coming to the government. But this is, it's absolute. We should be, everybody in America, we should be rioting in the streets over that. Instead, no, what do we riot? I don't even know what we riot over anymore.
Give the Congress one. Give the Congress one, I guess, caveat, which is they're trying to do what they normally do with debt ceilings in the midst of inflation. They're starting to figure out nobody can take a pay cut because everybody's costs have. I'm sure every department says, well, all of our costs have gone up. There's this inflation thing. And this is why they can't cut. This is why they probably could have cut maybe 10 years ago more easily than they could now, Joe, because this inflation is the new factor that they haven't dealt with this budget. So obviously we can't cut anything because everybody has higher expenses, right? That's got to be a major part of it.
I know where we can cut a little bit. We spent $13 billion with the undocumented minors. These are minors that are coming over the border by themselves, right? This is, there's $13 billion. At least that's what they're owning up to just on that, just on the minors part. But, just think about, man, with $13 billion, couldn't we have come up with a better way for all these people to get here versus having to, walk through 8 different countries and doing whatever they're doing? Of course we could, but why do that? That would make sense. Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back. (800-951-0592). Joe and Jason, Patriot Radio News Hour on this Wednesday. Quick look here at the markets. The Dow is down 270. The S&P is down 36. The Nasdaq's down 101. Gold's up $14 right now, $19.72. Silver, good day for silver here, up 42 cents, $23.66. If you're sitting there going, man, this is not going to end very well. Already, really, if you think about when Joe Biden got into office, and I know that the Dow and the S&P, they've been higher, right? They've also been lower, but we've now had, if you take out all that stuff, we're essentially, almost 2.5, 3 years now where the Dow and the Nasdaq and the S haven't done anything, right? They're just sitting there, which really, with the rate of inflation, means you're losing. I mean, if it was going up 5, 6, 7%, okay, well, maybe it's kind of keeping up a little bit, but no, it's flat to down, which really makes the situation even harder. And the problem is that it looks like, despite things slowing down, it's not slowing down enough. Inflation is still rearing its ugly head and looks like it wants to go higher again, which means rates are going to go higher again. We've got this comedy show that we call a debt ceiling. If you're just tired of it all, you get your gold and silver put away. You get your money out of the banks, right? Call Joey. Get your money over at Northwestern Mutual, a non-bank. And then you got to look at our good friends at Y Refi. They're not correlated to Wall Street at all. It doesn't care. Doesn't care. Doesn't care about earnings. It doesn't care about debt ceilings. It doesn't care about rate hikes, rate pauses, rate cuts. You can get up to 10.25%. Here's what we love. No fees. We love that. You can take the interest monthly. You can compound it. You can do whatever you want to do. And if you need your money back, you get your 100% of your principal back. No questions asked. You need $50,000 or more to start. But check them out. InvestYRefi.com. That's the word invest, the letter Y, REFY.com. Or just call them at 888-YREFI24. And Jason, the bankruptcy caravan continues here. Bankruptcies now about more than double the rate that we saw a year ago. A year ago, we saw a little over 100 what we'll call corporate bankruptcies. So far this year, we're at 230. But the one thing the big difference is the amounts. We're seeing more and more bankruptcies now. They're not the $1 million variety, the $5 million. We're talking about $10 million, $20 million, $50 million, $100 million bankruptcies. And Jason, according to UBS, the big wave won't even start for another 60 to 90 days. I mean, this is going to be one of these things we're talking about. We haven't seen bankruptcies like this. This is like before Lehman Brothers. This is the exact same setup that we saw before that happened. And I'm sitting there going to myself, my gosh, are we doing the same thing? Is this playing out again? Right? Because now all of a sudden, I've been saying they shouldn't raise rates. But Jason, now they're like, hey, listen, right now, it looks like they're going to raise rates again in June. And I remember in August of 2007, Ben Bernanke, the interest rate at that time was 5.25%. Kind of right, we're between 5 and 5.25% now. And he was talking about, no, the markets are fine. Everything's fine. If you look at the Fed has like one of their stress indexes. I don't even know how the math works. Again, it's not one of these. This is like debt ceiling math that they do. When Lehman Brothers went under, the stress index on this Fed reading was 9.5, something like that. Not quite 10, that's a lot of stress. When Silicon Valley Bank went under, it only got to 1.5. And do you know right now, so I just told you, corporate bankruptcies are up more than 100%, more than double. And the amount of the bankruptcies are significantly higher than they were last year. So it's actually worse. Do you know that right now, according to the Fed, well, because they're doing a really good job, that stress index is actually negative? This is how far their heads are up their own asses. How can that possibly be? When we're sitting here talking about, Jamie Dimon coming out, matter-of-factly telling everybody, we're going to have a lot more banks going under. Rates are going to go much higher than expected. Jason, I feel like they're going to raise rates right into a collapse. That's just, that was the Lehman setup. We'll see if they learned anything. I doubt it.
It is a little different. With the housing crash, there was fraudulently bad assets that everybody was trying to fleece all at once, which is, I think, why it moved in a fairly fast pace. Whereas, Joe, what's happening now is it's just market mechanics. Hey, I got a bunch of assets on my books and nobody wants them. And now we got inflation to boot, right? Because of all the printing in 2020. So these are market mechanics, and so these assets, like you said earlier, another 60 to 90 days for this, and another 60 to 90 days for that. It's going to be it's going to be slow for a while. It's going to grind, and it has been. Here we are, years where the markets have just sat in the same place with inflation. So it's grinding slowly down, and people just sort of get kind of used to a lower standard. Oh, it's just kind of going to be like this for a while, and people in their minds are like, well, at some point it'll just get better. But then right about the point where you think maybe it's going to get better, that's when it can suddenly move faster, when suddenly a whole bunch of the assets start leaving the books, or a lot more bankruptcies just start hitting all at once, because these banks that close down and these bad assets that aren't going anywhere, it's a little bit at first, and then it just builds up and it builds up, and it's kind of like Jenga or some of these other games where you pull the pins out and then suddenly all the balls fall out all at once, because at some point it's just a couple of balls and a couple of pins and things don't look good, and then you pull that one Jenga block out and the whole thing falls. That we're going to hit that at some point, Joe. But I think it's a little different than '08, which is when people found out these were bad assets, it was run for the door, right? And there wasn't anybody buying at the door. So this time, same thing, but I think it's just going to be slower. You're going to see a lot of bad news that just continues to happen. And we got this election year coming next year, and boy, there's going to be a lot of cover for economic chaos beneath, Trump is evil and Biden is evil and DeSantis is bad, and that whole thing. there's nothing we're going to be able to do, Joe, to keep politics off this show, because it's going to be the only thing people are talking about at some point next year. And it's a great cover for economic chaos.
Yeah, it always is. It always gets people fired up on both sides. But again, this is just simple math. Jason's right. It is different. It's actually easier to see than
Yep.
what happened in the financial crisis. But I've been saying this all forever. How did you go bankrupt? Right. Well, it was gradually at first, and then it was suddenly. Here's what I didn't know. Do you know that was in The Sun Also Rises? That was written in 1926. One of the characters in the book there was talking about how he went bankrupt, and this is exactly what we're looking at here. Think about we're at this debt ceiling, and they've decided we can't even cut. We're going to cut the increase. We're actually not going to cut. Right? And again, more money creation right now. Just because you don't hear it. The Fed is loaning records amounts of money to banks right now. You don't hear about it. Now, this wasn't in place in 2007. Kind of why, right, it made such a big splash. The reason why it's a grind this time is because they keep lending and hoping that things get better. But the problem is that as this data comes in, Jason, it doesn't look like it. We know, and we've talked about central bank gold buying. Last year was an all-time record high. First quarter of this year, record demand for the first quarter. Well, the central bank, the World Gold Council, they took a survey between February 7th and April 7th. So this is fairly recent. And they asked these central banks, hey, are you guys going to be boosting your reserves over the next 12 months? 24, let's just round up here, 25, 1 in 4 central banks in the world said yes. We're going to be adding to the survey. Now, the problem is they only interviewed 59 central banks, so I don't know which ones they interviewed, right? If they interviewed the G7, right, all the, no, we're not going to do it, right? I mean, this thing could be skewed one way or another, but they were blown away. Apparently they've done this survey in the past. They've never had a number this high of this many central banks. And these are just the ones, Jason, that are willing to admit that they're going to be adding to their portfolios, which really tells you what, because really at the end of the day, these banks know, these central banks know, right? We don't understand all the idiot things they do. Matter of fact, great article about Jamie Dimon and J.P. Morgan today on All American Gold. How they're playing, games with their balance sheet to make things look better than what they really are, right? Accounting gimmicks that the central banks allow for. Well, these other central banks, they're bankers. They know how it works. They're looking at this, and you know what they're saying, Jason? Yeah, we need to add to our gold portfolio. That tells you everything you need to know. Think about this. I want to tell you how quickly things have changed. Go back 25 years. 25 years ago, no central banks were adding to their gold holdings. And maybe there may have been one or two, But essentially, no matter of fact, guess what central banks were doing? They were liquidating their gold holdings. Right? I mean, England, the most notorious, right, boy, they rue the day. I wish they had, how much do you want to bet they wish they had all that gold back that they sold? But take the big gold holders that aren't the United States. Italy, France, Germany, right? Because they had a lot of gold stored up when we were the biggest trading partner in the world back when gold was money. They had reached an agreement that between the European Union, I'm talking the old European Union, not the one from today, The old one. You had England and Ireland. You had Spain and Portugal, France, Germany, Italy, right? The Netherlands, right? That was about it. Just that small group. Hey, we're only going to sell 500 metric tons of gold a year. Think about that statement. 500 metric tons of gold a year. That's what they agreed to sell. Of course, a metric ton, 32,150 ounces of gold. By 2004, they were hardly selling any. But before 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2000, they were selling 500 metric tons. Now look at where we're at. Last year alone, central banks bought 1,200 metric tons, just under 1,200 metric tons, a new all-time record. Central banks have not sold gold. When you add up all the buying and all the selling, they haven't sold gold, Jason, since 2006. That was the last year where central banks actually sold more gold than they bought. And now, according to the World Gold Council, more central banks than ever are saying we're buying gold. Be your own central bank and put the gold and silver away. When we get back, we got a silver special coming up.